Hello. Bonjour Maximilien. Vous êtes en mute, je crois. Ouais.
Hello, good morning.
Hello, hi.
How are you?
Good, good, good. And you, how are you?
Thank you very
Doing
much. Thank you. I'm
good?
very good.
Great. Can you hear me well? I'm sorry I couldn't attend
Yes,
the testing session. Okay, great.
yes,
Thank you.
very well. And we already have 21 participants. I
Oh,
just
good.
recognized. So
Okay.
maybe we wait 1 or 2 minutes before we start, so the other participants also have a
Oh,
chance to
of course.
connect to the meeting. Okay, so we have 3 minutes after 10. I would like to welcome everybody who is joining this session. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Maximilian Zaya. I work for the GIZ and the Moroccan German Energy Partnership. On behalf of the German Moroccan Energy Partnership, PAREMA, and the GIZ, I would like to welcome you to today's webinar on renewable electricity investment opportunities in Morocco. I'm pleased to see such strong interest from companies, public institutions, and energy sector stakeholders from both German and Moroccan, from both Germany and Morocco. We set up this webinar today due to several reasons. Morocco has established itself as a regional frontrunner for renewable energy. With its excellent renewable resources, its ambitious energy transition agenda, and respective regulatory framework reforms and development, the country offers increasingly attractive investment opportunities for private sector investments and international cooperation. The German Moroccan Energy Partnership, PAREMA, its objectives are to support the exchange between both countries on a political and on a private sector level, facilitate dialogue between actors from both spheres, and a key part of this work is helping energy stakeholders better understand emerging opportunities and regulatory developments in the Moroccan energy market. This is why we set up today's webinar together with URITI Law and the German Chamber for Commerce and Industry in Morocco. Since Morocco is continuing to modernize its electricity sector and strengthen the framework for private sector participation, for companies that consider investments in this sphere, it is essential to understand these developments. We are therefore very pleased to have our colleagues from URITI with us today. Their expertise and practical insights will help to shed light on the regulatory, technical, and procedural aspects of the renewable energy transition and its respective investment opportunities, and provide valuable guidance for market participants. Before we start, just 2 technical remarks. You can ask questions or share your comments via the chat or via the chat function throughout the webinar. The AHK will collect your questions so that experts from URITI can answer them at the end of the presentation. And a last remark, this webinar is going to be recorded. It will be posted on the channel of the AHK Morocco on YouTube and shared on LinkedIn so you can watch it again later. I would like to thank all the participants for joining us today and wish you a very informative and engaging session. Thank you very much. And now I hand over to our colleagues from URITI.
Thank you very much, Maximilien. I think we're good. So we are very, very grateful to have you today, all the audience. So my name is Dominique Nkoyak. I am an international energy lawyer, and I've been a lawyer in this industry for the past 10 years, plus 10 years, specifically in Africa, North Africa, and Sub-Saharan Africa, working on large-scale renewable energy projects on the continent. I joined URITI Law Firm a couple of years ago, and I am here with my colleague, Noël Nader. And we are, as I mentioned before, we are pleased to have you today because, as Maximilien mentioned before, Morocco today is one of the key point of entry when we are talking about renewable energy on the African continent. The country is moving really fast. We have seen very large scale projects developed in the recent years in the country. And today we are here to give you an overview and a deep understanding of the legal framework. It's going to be very practical. Okay, we are lawyers, but we understand that we are not talking to lawyers specifically, so that there might be some operational aspect that we are going to develop during this webinar as well. So just to introduce URITI really quickly, we are a Pan-African independent law firm, which means that we cover a very large part of the African continent, let's say the North Africa, and also all the Sub-Saharan region. Okay, so we specify on this region on energy sector and also infrastructure sectors. Okay, so we advise clients in Morocco, but also at an international level. So it might be European companies, it might be American companies, any company, any international company interested in doing business and in developing energy projects in Africa and specifically in Morocco. We are here to provide you high standard quality legal counseling, okay, to help you develop your projects. So what makes us different is that we were, before joining URITI, before URITI was created, we were all lawyers from major leading firms in the industry. Okay, we worked in Paris, we worked in the United States, etc., and we gathered together to create on the continent a firm which is a boutique law firm which is able to deliver high quality service the same way you would find in those major firms. Okay, so this is our footprint. Okay, so we deliver international standard legal services. So our presence, I mentioned before, we have two offices. We have an office in Casablanca in Morocco. So this is our main office. And we recently opened an office in Paris because we have realized that in Europe, we have a lot of clients, in Europe, which would like to have a point of contact in Paris, but all the deals are related to the Moroccan office. Okay. So very quickly, our practices. First of all, we do project development and finance, which means that we are able to assist you, let's say any developer, investor on any operation relating to all the different steps that you will have to go through to develop your project. So permitting, licensing, contract review, legal requirement analysis, etc., etc. We are here to help any developer on those aspects. We also do project finance, okay, which means that we can assist, we usually assist lenders, but also borrowers on the different aspects or a project finance operation, transaction, to finance any project in Morocco. So this is very important because it means we have been doing that for years, and I've been doing that myself for 10 years. Our seniors in the team have 10 plus years of experience. Our partners, they combine 40 years of experience. Okay, so we have been advising lenders, commercial banks, IFIs, okay, international financial institutions, for many years. So we are able to tell you specifically in Morocco what the lenders are expecting to make your project bankable. Okay, this is a keyword, and this is what we do as well. We also do public-private partnerships. Morocco is launching many projects under this regime currently. So very interesting to look into these. This is for our project development and finance, let's say, field of activity, domain of activity. Secondly, we have a corporate team, okay, which specializes in corporate and M&A, merger and acquisition, and also private equity, based in Morocco, operating in Morocco, okay. And then we do more, let's say, casual activities, transactions, operations. We have a department which specializes in business litigation and arbitration, okay? And we also do foreign investment advisory. So this is a more, let's say, general activity where we would be advising, foreign investors who don't know where to start, okay? So in terms of market entry, regulatory procedures, dealing with the administration, etc., because the administrative system obviously is very different from the West countries, system. So we are here to help you navigate in this ecosystem, and we also do, let's say, general commercial contracts for our clients as well. So the key sectors that we work in, I don't know if you can see, maybe Noel, you can go maybe a bit further down on the slide, because the key sectors are not seen very well. But we have energy, so renewable energy, but we also do gas, we also do oil and gas. But for today, let's say that we do renewable energy. So whether it is solar, photovoltaic, renewable energy, wind power plant, wind power projects, it could be also hydrogen projects. Morocco is very, very now investing into hydrogen projects. And any kind, it could be onshore or offshore, okay? We also do infrastructure and transport, real estate and hospitality, etc. But for today, let's stay on this energy competence that we have, which will be the topic of today. So I think it's all for me. Noel, maybe you want to say a couple of words before we start?
Yes, thank you, Dominique, for your introduction. So good morning, everyone, and welcome to this webinar. My name is Noel Nader. I'm an associate in the Project Development and Finance Department at URITI Law Firm, and I'm specialized in energy law. So as you know, today's session will provide an overview of the regulatory, technical, and procedural framework for medium voltage electricity generation from renewable energy sources in Morocco. So here is our agenda for today. First of all, we will start with a short introduction on why Morocco market is matter. We will then look at how the electricity market is structured today and who are the key institutional players. After that, we will have a brief look at the electricity grid. Then we will discuss the key steps for developing a medium voltage renewable energy project. And we will close with a Q&A session in the end. So let's start with some context about Morocco. So as you can see, why Morocco? So Morocco is a regional leader in renewable energy. The country has committed to 52% of installed electricity capacity from renewables by 2030, and also a carbon neutrality objective by 2050. But these are not just targets, because Morocco's renewable capacity has already doubled in 9 years from 2.8 gigawatts to 5.5 gigawatts from 2015 to 2024 across wind, solar, and hydropower. And what makes Morocco particularly interesting for foreign companies right now are 3 things you can see on the right of the slide. So first of all, the electricity market has been progressively open to private operators, both for commercial generation and for self-consumption. Second, a comprehensive legal framework is now in place in Morocco with dedicated institutions to support project development. Third, Morocco has a modern grid infrastructure with published hosting capacity, which means private investors can actually plan a project with real number. Now let's look at how the electricity market is structured in Morocco. So first of all, Morocco's electricity market has been progressively liberalized over the past 15 years. 3K laws mark this evolution. So in 2010, the law 1309 ended the public monopoly and allowed private operators to generate and sell renewable electricity. In 2016, law 5815 opened direct sales to consumers and clarified grid access conditions. And in 2023, law 8221 installed and opened the self-production to literally anyone. For you as company, the key question is which regime applies to your project? The answer is simple. It depends on your business model. The answer depends on your business model. So it's either the electricity generation for commercial purposes regime under law 1309 or the self-generation for self-consumption regime law under the law 8221. For the commercial purposes, so for the electricity generation for commercial purposes, this applies if you want to produce electricity and sell it as a business directly to consumers. Furthermore, surplus of electricity production may be purchased back by the distribution network operator or by grid operator up to a limit of 20% of annual output. For the self-generation regime, this applies if you want to produce electricity primarily for your own consumption, for example, for your factory, to power your factory, to power your offices. But if you produce more than you consume, you can sell up to 20% of the surplus back into the grid. Both regimes are open to foreign companies operating in Morocco without local shareholding requirement. Now we will pass to briefly identify the key institution project developers will work with. So on an energy and policy level, we have the Ministry of Energy Transition and Sustainable Development. This ministry will formulate and implement national energy policy. It will establish the regulatory framework, supervise capacity planning. We have also the Moroccan Agency for Sustainable Energy. This agency is responsible for developing large-scale solar, wind, and hybrid projects, and it acts as contracting authority for structure standards also. Now, on a transmission and distribution level, we have the National Office of Electricity and Water, the ONI. This office operates and manages the national high-voltage transmission grid. It also plans transmission infrastructure. It ensures continuity of supply and system balance, integrate independent power producers into the grid, and prepare technical opinions and connection proposals. We have also the Regional Multi-Services Utilities, the SRMs. They are regional public companies. They are responsible for operating, maintaining, and developing medium and low voltage distribution network at a regional level. For the regulation and supervision level, we have the National Electricity Regulatory Authority. This is an independent administrative authority. It ensures fair and non-discriminatory access to electricity transmission and distribution networks. It sets also network access and use tariffs and publishes the aggregate hosting capacity of the networks and supervise tariffs and technical compliance. And finally, on a territorial and local support, we have the regional investment centers. They facilitate project implementation through permitting, urban planning support, and administrative coordination at the local level. And they are one-stop shops for investment-related procedures. They are also supported by local authorities at the walis, governors, municipal councils. They issue building permits and urban planning authorizations and participate in environmental assessments.
Thank you, Noel. Just before we move on, just to make sure that everyone is understanding what we are trying to show here, if you can just go back a little bit, the previous slide, Noel, please. The previous one as well. Okay, thank you. Just to make sure that we are all on the same page and we are not just doing a lecture, okay? So what you need to understand is that there are two main regimes, as Noel mentioned, okay? So when you are coming in Morocco to invest, okay, to develop a renewable energy project, you will have two regimes applicable, okay? So you will have to decide whether your intention is to produce electricity to sell it, okay, to a customer, okay? In which case you will fall under what we call here the electricity generation for commercial purpose regime, okay, which is governed by the law 1309. And if you don't, you will have another option, which is if your intention is to produce electricity for self-consumption. Let's imagine that you are running an hydrogen factory, hydrogen production factory, okay, or whatever, and you need to produce energy by yourself, maybe because it's more cost effective, okay, you will have another regime which is called the self-consumption regime, okay, and under this regime, the legislator introduced a possibility for you to sell, the excess, the surplus of electricity that you would not consume. Okay, just for you to understand that there are two regimes, and it's really important because further down during the presentation, you will see all the time, the difference that we made between those two regimes. Okay, we can move on, Noel.
Yes, thank you, Dominique, for.
It's okay, it's
for
fine.
your point.
And then on institutions, what I just wanted to add, Noel presented that very well. I want the audience to see that today the institutional framework in Morocco is very well established. So if your intention is to come and invest in Morocco, we want you to know that you will have people to talk to and to help you, because the Moroccan government has made in place an ecosystem, a real ecosystem, which which operates around the Ministry of Energy and Transition and Sustainable Development, which is the main entity which set the goals, okay? But around that ministry, you will have the different institutions that Noel mentioned. The key one that you need to keep in mind will be Mazen, okay? So Mazen, Moroccan Agency for Sustainable Energy. Mazen is more, let's say, a political entity, but they will be the one to reach out to if you want to have a better understanding of where the government is going, in terms of political program in the energy sector, and they have also specific, let's say, specific missions. But for you to understand today that Mazen will be a local point, let's say, how to say, it will be, yes, your local point, your local principal point if you have, let's say, question on the governmental agenda, okay? Then the next main and key operator will be the ONI, okay, National Office of Electricity and Drinking Water. It is the equivalent to EDF. We all know EDF. It is the equivalent to EDF in Morocco. Before, ONI had the monopoly of this sector, but now that is liberalized, the ONI, okay, as let's say now is facing other operators in the sector, but it's still key because it is still the public entity which is in charge of operating and managing first of all the national transmission grid, okay, and also the ONI is planning transmission infrastructure and is also integrating independent power producers into the grid, as Noel mentioned. So they have a key role in the ecosystem, okay? And the rest maybe we can mention, yeah, before another key actor will be the National Electricity Regulatory Authority. So there is a regulator, okay, who will fix the electricity tariffs, okay? Will also fix with the network tariffs, okay, the tariffs to access the network. So just keep in mind that these are the key institutions in place in Morocco, and this also shows that Morocco is very, let's say, advanced compared to other countries in Africa in terms of setting an environment where you will have legal certainty and an institutional framework, and a stable institutional framework for investors. Okay, we can move on. Thank you, Noel.
Thank you, Dominique, for your practical view, these things. Okay, so now we will pass for a brief word on the electricity grid, because the voltage level of your connection determines which rule will apply to you. So in Morocco, we have 3 voltage levels. We have the low voltage level between up to 1 kilovolt. It covers domestic and commercial consumption. We have also the medium voltage level between 5.5 kilovolts to 22 kilovolts. The K level for renewable energy projects. It covers regional distribution, and we have the high voltage from 60 kilovolts to 150 kilovolts and above. It handles long distance transmissions between regions. In Morocco, we have a clear governing frameworks and grid codes. So for the distribution, for the medium voltage level, we have a decree that sets the conditions and procedure for connecting renewable electricity facilities to the national medium voltage grid. And for the high voltage level, we have also a grid code, the National Electricity Transmission Grid Code, which also govern the technical and operational rules for connection and access to the high voltage transmission grid. For the purpose of today's session, we will focus on medium voltage. Okay, so now this is the heart of our presentation. The case steps to develop a medium voltage renewable energy projects. So we will see the development, the overview of the 3 sequential stages for development a medium voltage renewable electricity project. Step 1 is the site selection. So choosing and securing the land of your project. This is your step 1. Step 2 is the licensing and permitting. This covers 4 distinct main authorizations tracks. They are environmental authorizations, building permits, electricity generations, and grid access rights. And in the end, we have the renewable electricity sale, so structuring and commercializing your output. So now we will pass to step 1, site selection. Okay, so the first thing to understand is the land tenure regimes that applies to your site. There are 4 main categories in Morocco. We have the public domain. It cannot be sold. You can only occupy it through a temporary occupancy authorization. We have also the private domain of the state. It can be leased and can be sold even if the project serves an economic interest. And you have also the private land with the simplest framework. You can lease up to 99 years of purchase outright. And we have finally the collective lands. It requires a specification document and ministerial order. It's a long process, and you should plan for extra time in your business schedule if you are looking to a collective land. Beyond the land tenure regimes, the zone requirements matter. And here is the 2 legal regimes diverge. So we have for the electricity generation for commercial purposes with a capacity of 2 megawatts or more, your project must be located within designated project development zones. So you have zone requirements for the commercial generation when the capacity is up to your capacity is 2 megawatts or more. Okay, so we have the Ministry of Energy defined by a ministerial order the zones. As you can see on the slide, we have, for example, for the wind energy development zones, we have Tanger, Taza, El Jadida. So there are zones where you can develop your wind projects only in the zones. On this, and you can also see that for the under the self-production regime, there is no zone requirement at all. So you have the flexibility to install on your own industrial or commercial premises. We move now to the step 2, the licensing and permitting. Yes.
No, sorry. I just wanted to add something, if I may, on the previous slides before you move the two ones. Maybe the previous ones, please. The previous one as well. The previous one. If you can just go back. Yes, thank you. And this and the second one. So just to summarize, because as I think everyone has noticed, my point is to make sure that we are not just giving a lecture and that you have practical takeaways. In terms of site selection, Noel mentioned that very well before. I'm not going to repeat, but what I would like you to understand is that in Morocco today, as Noel has just mentioned, the government has chosen, okay, a geographical area where renewable energy projects can be developed. Okay, you cannot go anywhere else. Okay, so when you come to Morocco to develop your projects, the first thing you need to check is okay, where will be the site location, and there is a map. Okay, there is a map drawn by the government, and you will have to check that map. That's the first thing. Once you check on the map, you will have some land which will be private lands, others will be private lands, private and public lands, sorry, and others will be, let's say, collective lands. What I want to mention, we went a bit fast here, is that obviously the public domain, you will only have a temporary occupancy authorization. It will last 10 years, okay? 10 years renewable, but since you are on the public domain, it can be revocable. It can be revoked, so it is revocable at any time, okay? So it's a bit, I would not say it is risky because the government is used to deliver this type of authorizations, but you have to keep it in mind, okay? So another option will be going for a private domain, the private domain of the state, okay? So you have the public domain and the private domain of the state. When you are dealing with the private domain of the state, you have more flexibility because it's obviously less regulated. And you have the possibility to negotiate with the government, okay, the conditions of your occupation, okay? And then on private land, if you go on a private land, then you will have the possibility to have a lease for up to 99 years, okay? So it's a long time. And you can also purchase, but usually in this type of projects, we usually see a lease, okay, long-term leases for up to 99 years. Noel, maybe you can go to the next slide, please. Okay, so here we made an example of we made a list of the different, let's say, the different areas and town where you will find this geographical, site that I mentioned before. Okay, so it's really important when you come to have someone advising you on where the site of your project will be located. Okay, I think that's it. Just I think we can move on, and if I have anything to add, but it's fine. Thank you, Noel.
Thank you. So now we move to the licensing and permitting. We will go through each of authorization. We will start with the environmental authorizations. So projects that, due to their nature, size, or location, may generate adverse impacts on the biophysical environment and local communities are required to obtain the relevant environmental authorization. So the energy projects also have to are required to obtain this environmental authorization. So step one, the project developer should prepare an environmental impact assessment to identify and assess the project's potential environmental and social impacts. Step two, this assessment report is submitted to the government authority responsible for environmental matters. Step three, we will have a public inquiry. It will be conducted to inform stakeholders and collect comments and observations from the public. Step four, the committee reviews the project and issues an opinion on the project's environmental acceptability. And step five, based on this committee opinion, the competent environmental authority may issue an environmental acceptability decision. And step six, where required, this environmental acceptability decision is a prerequisite for obtaining the other authorizations, the other permits, like the construction permit, the grid connection permit. So the key point is that the environmental authorization is a separate and preliminary requirement. It must be secured before any other authorization can be granted. Once you have your site and environmental clearance, the next requirement is the building permit. So any power plant in Morocco requires a building permit regardless of capacity. The application is filed either at the Guichet Unique des Autorisations d'Urbanisme, the one-stop shop for urban planning permits, or at the Municipal Registry Office. The procedure is simple. It has two steps. You file your application against an acknowledgement of receipt. Then the president of the municipal council or the wali issues a decision to approve or refuse with reasons. The file must include different documents. The main ones are the written application, a topographic plan, a technical note, a land title, an architecture drawing, and an environmental impact study where applicable. The third key aspect of the licensing and permitting framework concerns the renewable electricity generation rights. So, depending on the project's business model, we will have two legal regimes will apply. So, first of all, under electricity generation for commercial purposes, the applicable procedure depends on the installed capacity of your installation. So, if you have an installation with below 2 megawatts, a simple declaration to the Ministry of Energy is sufficient. So no formal authorization is required. At or above 2 megawatts, a formal authorization is required in two stages. First stage is a provisional authorization. It's obtained before construction. This required prior to any construction works and is subject to the grid operator prior technical opinion. Second is an operating authorization. It's applied for within 2 months of completing construction works and required before commissioning. This operating authorization is valid for 25 years and is renewable once for the same period. Let's look now at what you actually need to file. The content differ depending on the regime. So we have the declaration regime and the authorization regime. For the declaration regime, the file is relatively simple. We have an administrative file, a technical file, an orientation study by the grid operator, a technical opinion of the grid operator. All this document will be filed in 3 copies with the Ministry of Energy. Now, for the provisional authorization, the file is more substantial. We have an applicant file, information file, a legal and administrative file, a technical project file. We have also safety and grid connection file, implementation plan, environmental file, technical and financial capacity file, orientation study, and detailed grid connection study. All these documents also will be filed in 3 copies with the Ministry of Energy. And finally, for the operating authorization, the application must comply with the template established by order of the governmental authority. The file is accompanied by specifications document setting out the obligation and conditions governing the operation of the installation, and the grid operator confirmed the final feasibility of connection to the network. And again, filing in 3 copies with the Ministry of Energy. The authorization is then valid for 25 years and renewable once. Now we will pass to the self-generation of electricity for self-consumption regime. So here we have 3 connection regimes applied depending on your capacity and whether you connect to the grid or not. So first of all, the declaration regime. This regime is related to the off-grid facilities and for the low voltage facilities with capacity at or below 11 kilowatts. This applies to standalone facilities and small-scale industrial or domestic installations. A simple declaration to the grid operator is sufficient under this regime. The second regime is the connection approval regime for installations between 11 kilowatts and 5 megawatts connecting to the low or medium voltage network. You must request and obtain technical approval from the grid operator to ensure grid stability and safety. This is a middle path, enhanced control without the full ministerial authorization process. And we have finally the authorization regime for installation of 5 megawatts or more. Authorization is issued by the Ministry of Energy after examination of the applicant file and a technical opinion from the relevant grid operator. So it's a transmission grid operator or distribution, depending on the voltage level. Any application filed with the competent authority must include at a minimum the following documents, depending on the procedure applicable to the project. So common to all 3 procedures, so common to the declaration procedure, the connection approval regime, the authorization regime, we have common documents. They are documents evidencing the applicant identity. We have also a title deed or document establishing a real right, the undertaking to reserve production for self-consumption, and a document evidencing ownership of or the right to dispose of the installation. On a technical side, also common to all the 3 regimes, we have a single line electrical diagram and a layout diagram of the equipment, and a report on electricity needs and consumption. Now, specific only to the declaration regime, the applicant should provide a report on self-consumption's need for connected installations. And specific to the connection approval regime and authorization regime, the applicant should provide an undertaking to pay study fees, a site details and equipment technical characteristics and implementation schedule, an environmental impact study, the connection agreement concluded with the system operator, and an insurance certificate. We now turn to the 4th step and final element of the licensing and permitting phase, the grid access rights. So it depends also on your business model. So we will apply the electricity generation for commercial purposes regime or the self-generation of electricity for self-consumption regime. Let's first look to how to connect to the electricity generation for commercial purposes regime. The starting principle is important because access to the medium voltage network is guaranteed right for the electricity producers. Any refusal by the network operator must be reasoned, well-founded, and non-discriminatory. The connection process has 5 steps. So step one is the technical and financial connection proposal. So upon completion of the detailed grid connection study, the distribution network operator transmits a technical and financial connection proposal to the applicant for the provisional authorization. Second step, the producer accepts the PTF, the technical and financial connection proposal, which triggers the preparation and execution of a connection agreement with the grid operator. Third step, the connection works are carried out either by the network operator directly or by an approved service provider under its supervision. Connection costs are borne by the producer under the terms of the agreement. Step 4, we have the conformity tests. After completion of works, the grid operator carries out conformity tests and formally accepts the connection. And the final step, once tests yield satisfactory results, the connection is commissioned and the producer may begin injecting energy into the grid in accordance with the operating authorization. So this was the regime for the electricity generation for commercial purposes related to the grid access rights. Now we will pass to the grid access rights applicable under the self-production regime. We should distinguish between two rights. We have the grid connections right and the national grid access right. This distinction is particularly important under law 8221 because unlike law 1309 related to the commercial purposes generation, the legislator explicitly differentiates between the connection rights, which is refer to connect an installation to the electricity grid, and the national grid access rights, which refer to use the national grid to transport electricity between a generation site and a separate self-consumption site. Let us first look at the declaration regime. So under this regime, connection rights are available only for installation connected or to be connected to the low voltage network. However, no national grid access rights are available under this regime. Moving to the connection approval regime, which applies to the project with an installed capacity between 11 kilowatts and 5 megawatts, connection rights are granted subject to several requirements, including a capacity availability, a technical study, a connection approval issued by the distribution network operator, an execution of a connection agreement, and the completion of connection works. Nevertheless, this regime only provides for connection rights to the network. It does not grant a national grid access right. So the connection approval regime, we cannot transport electricity between separate generation and consumption sites. Finally, under the authorization regime, which is applicable to projects with an installed capacity of 5 megawatts or more, connection rights are also available, subject to a more comprehensive approval process. So in addition to the technical study and the capacity availability and the completion of connection works, we should obtain a technical opinions from the transmission and distribution network operators and an administrative authorization from the Ministry of Energy. In addition to this, the authorization regime is the only regime under which a project may benefit from the national grid access rights. In practical terms, this means that electricity may be transported through the national grid from the generation site to a separate self-consumption site, subject to, first of all, an approval from the National Electricity Transmission Network Operator, an approval from the Electricity Distribution Network Operator, an execution of the required network access arrangement, and a compliance with the network capacity and technical requirements. However, as we saw, even where a project is eligible for connection or access to the grid, your ability to connect to the grid depends on the available hosting capacity at your connection point. This applies to all self-generation installations that are connected to the national grid. The allocation rule is simple: first come, first served. So capacity is allocated in chronological order based on the exact date and time your declaration or application was filed. This means timing matters. If you are planning a project, you should not wait to file. The key risk is if the available capacity at your preferred connection point is insufficient, you may simply be unable to connect. The practical takeaway is before you commit to a site, you should check the National Electricity Regulatory Authority published hosting capacity data for your target connection point and technology. Consequently, to secure your priority access and your availability capacity access, you must reserve an injection capacity as part of your application procedure. So this reservation ensures the project's priority access to the network within the limit of the available envelopes for a maximum period of 3 years. So the process has 4 stages. The first stage is the provisional reservation, triggered automatically by the filing of your authorization or declaration application. It's allocated within the available envelopes for a maximum of 3 years on a first filed basis. The second step is the reservation remuneration. So you must pay a non-refundable advance payment upon granting of capacity. This is charged against your future connection costs. Paying this remuneration is mandatory to maintain the reservation. Third step, it's a possible extension. So in case you have exceptional circumstance, you may apply for a recent extension of the reservation period. And the final stage is converting your provisional reservation to a final reservation. The provisional reservation converts upon the completion of the declaration procedure and fulfillment of the applicable connection requirements for the declaration regime, and upon the execution of the connection agreement for the connection approval regime, and upon issuance of the final authorization for the authorization regime. We will pass now to have a quick look at the costs you need to factor into your financial model. 2 categories apply to any operator connected to the medium voltage distribution network. So first, we have the distribution network use tariff. This is a regulated usage charge set by the National Electricity Regulatory Authority. The current rate is 5.92 centimes of dirhams per kilowatt hour. It covers the operation, maintenance, and development of the electricity distribution network and is paid by the producer under the Grid Connection and Network Access Agreement. Second, you have other costs like the connection cost, the technical study expenses, and the inspection and certifications costs. We now arrive at the final step, the final stage of our presentation, selling your renewable electricity. So once your project is authorized, is connected and commissioned, so the answer depends on your regime. So we will start with the electricity generation for commercial purposes regime. So you have 3 options. Option 1, you sell to the public grid operator in order to meet the needs of the national market. You enter into a framework agreement with the grid operator or the regional distribution services. This option is subject to regulated tariffs fixed by the administration. Then you have the option 2. You can also sell directly your electricity to consumers connected to the medium voltage grid. The contract is freely negotiated between you and the customer outside tariff regulation. And you have the option 3, the export. So you can export your electricity through the national transmission grid and international interconnections, subject to a technical and economic agreement with the grid operator and an annual fee payable to the state on the portion exported. Now, under the self-generation of electricity for self-consumption, the commercial dimension is more limited. So you don't have the 3 options. Self-producer may only sell up to 20% of their annual surplus self-generated electricity to the national electricity grid operator. The purchase price is determined by the regulation authority. And it's worth noting that the 20% cap may be increased upon the producer's request, subject to conditions to be specified through implementing regulations. Sorry. Let's close with the contractual structuring. You need to structure the sale of your electricity contractually. So you have two main contract structures. You have the power purchase agreement and the direct supply agreement, or the corporate power purchase agreement, the corporate PPA. So the first is the power purchase agreement. It's concluded with the grid operated directly or within the framework or structured projects managed by MAZEN, the Agency for Energy and Sustainable Energy. Under this structure, you sell exclusively to a public buyer acting as the sole off-taker. The commercialization process is governed by a public tendering procedure, which determines both the tariff and the terms of the PPA. So the PPA is standardized and long-term, typically 20 to 25 years, providing revenue stability over the project's timeline. And payment is guaranteed by the public buyer, sometimes backed by a sovereign guarantee. To illustrate the PPA's tariffs in Morocco, the slide shows three benchmark projects from the NUR program, as you can see on the slide. So the procedure to the PPA agreement conclusion, we have 4 steps. We have, first of all, a technical and financial pre-qualification of candidates. Second, we have submission and evaluation of bids based on price and technical criteria. Third step, the award of the project to the successful bidder. And finally, the execution of the agreements, the PPA itself, the grid connection agreement, and the related guarantees. Now we will pass to the second structure, which is the direct supply agreement or the corporate PPA. So it's concluded directly with an eligible industrial or commercial customer. The sale goes directly to the customer. The price is freely negotiated, and the contract is fully flexible on volume, term, delivery arrangements, and guarantees. The procedure is simply the negotiation and conclusion of the corporate PPA between the two parties. So we have arrived to the end of our presentation. Thank you very much for your attention. I hope this presentation has given you a clear overview and practical picture of how to develop an energy project in Morocco. So now we are happy to take your questions.
Thank you, Noel and Dominique, for the presentation. We will now move on to the first question we have. Do you have an example of a successfully realized access of an independent energy producer to ONI's grid?
A successful project developed, you mean? Can you please repeat the question? I think.
Okay, so the question is, do you have an example for successfully realized access of an independent energy producer to ONI's grid, and the person is not questioning about grid access in the framework of a PPA, so a real independent producer?
Yes, of course. Of course, there are many. Maybe we can go back in the slides. Noel, this the Moroccan energy market has been growing very fast for I would say the past 10 years. Obviously, I cannot give names. As a lawyer, I'm bound by the confidentiality. But there are many independent power projects which have been developed and which have been successfully connected to the medium grid in Morocco. So this is, I don't know if the question is only if there are any successful projects. And if that's the case, my answer is yes, and there are many, and they are all documented online on the public websites in Morocco. If the question is more specific to which were the issues encountered, maybe I can develop, but I'm not sure. So maybe the person can be more precise. But But I can confirm, yes, successful projects, there are many, and this continues. And I think that what we've seen, at least what we've tried to show in this presentation, is that as of today, the legal regime and the operational regime as well, the operational structure in Morocco to connect independent power projects developed in the areas that we talked to, connect this project to the national grids. They are in place. So the mechanisms are in place. We have the regulation, we have the legal framework, we have the institutions in place, and we also have a legal, let's say, legal text. So we saw before that we have a specific decree which governs grid connection for medium voltage. And we also have a specific code, the national code for a grid connection for high voltage connections as well. So everything is in place. I hope I've answered the question, but happy to develop further if needed.
Thank you, Dominique. Our second question is, how can we find out which lands are not only designated, but actually available in those zones? Because in the participants' understanding, the map that you mentioned, which is published by the government, does not indicate which lands has already been committed to other developers or projects.
Yes, that's a very good question. Noel, if you can maybe go back to the institution frameworks, please. Okay, so when you arrive in Morocco, the first thing you need to do is to reach out to what we call the CRIS, the regional investment centers, okay? Because these are your entry point as a foreign investor in Morocco, and they will be able to guide you through, okay, land selection. My point is, we've seen that you have several options. You have several options. Mainly, you have three options. You can go for a public domain. Okay, so when you go for public domain, you have the private domain of the state and the public domain. Okay, and the second option will be private lands. So for private lands, there is no, let's say, there is no public list of available domains. Okay, so this is you will have to do your own research. But if you are going for a public domain or private domain of the state, then you will have this entry point, the CRI. I've seen foreign investors do that all the time. They will be able to guide you and tell you, okay, based on the map, this is what we have available. And this will be your entry point to start discussions with the government and
Thank you, Dominique. We have one last question. What do you see as the main challenges by German or other European IPPs without previous experience in Morocco to successfully establish the first project? Maybe distinguish between small and large companies and small and large IPP projects.
the key issues you said?
Yes, the main challenges, yeah.
Okay. Well, the main challenges. Maybe I will answer in three steps. The first thing I would like to remind you, and what we've tried to show in our presentation, is that there will not be massive challenges because the framework is in place. I repeat myself, but really this is the message we would like to pass you on today. And obviously, you would need lawyers to get you to help you, navigate the ecosystem. But everything is in place. So we are in the past, let's say 10 years, we have not seen any major issues because projects are already being developed for many years. Okay, and Rex. So the experience that the government has gained over the years has helped them, enhance the regime, the legal regime, and the practicality of project development, of IPP project development in Morocco. So first of all, you can be comfortable. When you will arrive, you will not find, you know, massive issues. But if we go, so this is the first step, first thing to understand. The second thing to understand is that obviously, as you will find in many projects, this is very common. You will have common challenges or common issues that you will have to focus on. The first thing will be, we have talked about site selection, okay? Site selection and site attribution, okay? So there are lands. Obviously, there are lands, but as I mentioned before, maybe Noel, we can go back to the slide related to land allocation. When we are talking about land allocation, so you have now, you know that you have this specific area, but in the negotiation process, you will have to face maybe some difficulties if you go for public domain land, okay? Because we have seen that you have 10 years available, and it will be renewable, but it will be at the discretion of the government, which means that you will need to have a very solid projects, to convince the administration that your project is bankable and that your project will go, you will be able to develop to the end, okay? Because we've seen that the government will be very, they are very keen to analyze and to make sure that they select bankable projects only to allocate lands. So this will be let's say the first, it's not a challenge, but the first thing to very look at carefully. So land allocation, okay? If you go for private lands, so you won't have these type of issues. Let's say the second thing I would say, once you have the land, is obviously the permitting and licensing process. Again, nothing major, but the administration is what it is, especially if you are not, if you are a foreign investor, you will have to navigate through, let's say, the administrative process, okay? And this is where you will need help from lawyers, obviously, just to understand, because as we've seen, you have two regimes, okay? And even if you are sure of which regime you want to, sometimes you're not sure. So first of all, you need to select the good regime. I can give you an example. We advised some developers in the green hydrogen sector, okay? And the idea was for them to produce their own electricity, but to sell them as well. But all the, let's say, all the units, the components of the project were in the same group, meaning that the company producing electricity was company of the group, the company producing hydrogen, etc. So it was the same group. So the question was, okay, is it energy production for commercial purpose? Is it self-consumption, etc.? So first thing is to, you know, really be clear on which regime you are dealing with. Once you have the regime which is clear, okay, next thing will be the authorization licensing process. Okay, so this will be very classic: environmental authorizations, permitting, building permits, and everything we've seen about green access rights. But again, I don't see any major, okay, challenge. From the environmental perspective, Moroccan legal regime has adopted a large number of texts. So this could be an issue if you don't have assistance locally. There are many texts, you know, governing environmental environmental authorization process. Okay. And you need to go through different authorities, okay, to have your final authorization, environmental authorization, okay? And then in terms of building permit, electricity generation authorization, this is very classic. So as long as you follow the requirements, you will be fine. So if I should summarize, in terms of licensing and permitting, just to make sure that you are able to navigate the different texts, and once you have decided, okay, if you are under law 8221, which is a self-consumption regime, or under law 1309, which is a electricity generation for commercialization, once you know which regime you are, you will have plenty of text. Okay, you will need to navigate through them. That's it. And then in terms of grid connection, again, nothing major, except that you will have to decide whether you want to build your own transmission lines, which is possible, but it is less regulated, or whether you want to go through the national grid, which already exists and works perfectly fine. Everything is in place for you to do that. And then you will, if you choose the public national grid, then you will, go through all the steps that we've seen during the presentation. And I don't see any major issues. Maybe you should be careful, because there are, the tariffs to access the grid, they are set by the national regulator, the electricity regulator. So maybe you will have to be careful to take them into account in your business model, in terms of bankability. But this is really common to other countries. So I don't see any major issues. Maybe Noel, if you think of something, but I wouldn't say it's straightforward, but I would say it's the process is really clear and really well made for several years. So and yes, maybe the last thing would be, if you have your project which is being financed by any lender, let's say a commercial bank or IFIs, the bankability obviously is key. So it's a key word. So you would need to make sure that you have all licensing, permitting put together. You would need to make sure that you have your contracts in order. We've talked about corporate PPAs or classic power purchase agreements. You need to make sure that you have all the contractual protections to make sure that your project is bankable. And other than that, to me, that is the advantage in Morocco. The regime is now being more and more refined. So it's in terms of legal certainty for foreign investors. I think we are in a very, very nice place in Morocco as of today. I hope I answered the question.
Thank you very much, Dominique, and thank you very much, Noel. Abla, maybe just a short intro from you. Is there any question still open? Are we done?
Yes, that's all for questions.
Okay. Remarks. I think that today we have seen that there are a lot of opportunities to invest in the renewable energy sector in Morocco, but of course some open questions, and the aim of this webinar today was to clarify and to shed as much of transparency as possible to these questions, and I hope this helped to clarify the questions that you had in mind. I would like to sincerely thank Noel and Dominique from the very, very well structured presentation and the very, very well edited contents from URITI Law, and for the valuable insights and the contributions today, as well as Abla for the back office from the German Chamber for Commerce and Industry in Morocco. And of course, a special thanks to all you visitors and all the participants for your active engagement and thoughtful questions. And last but not least, we are looking forward to continuing in the next steps, the work, and have a great rest of the day. Thank you very much. Bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you all.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
It was a pleasure. Thank
Bye.
you.
It was a pleasure. Thank you.